The doors of the Grand Assembly Chamber weighed more than most spacecraft. They were built from compressed stellar matter, forged in the hearts of dying suns, and inscribed with the names of every civilization that had ever held power in the galaxy. When they opened, the sound echoed through halls that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires spanning millions of years. Ambassador David Reyes walked through those doors alone. The chamber stretched before him like a cathedral carved from starlight. 12,000 seats rose in concentric rings toward a ceiling lost in darkness, each seat occupied by a representative from a different world. Some were humanoid, others defied description. Beings of pure energy floated beside creatures made of living crystal. Hive minds spoke through 1,000 mouths while ancient machine intelligences processed through bodies older than Earth's sundot, and every single one of them was staring at David Reyes. The central platform where he stood was designed to make visitors feel small. It worked. The weight of alien attention pressed down on him like gravity from a collapsing star. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence, each one a declaration that humanity had arrived at the center of galactic power. High Chancellor Vorith rose from his throne of solidified light. He was a being of living mercury, his form constantly shifting, his voice resonating through translation matrices that converted his thoughts into sounds human ears could process. "You stand before the Eternal Assembly," Vorith announced, "the governing authority of 900 civilizations, the oldest institution in this galaxy. Your species has existed for less than an eye blink of cosmic time, yet you have invoked the protocol of desperate need. Explain yourself." David did not flinch. He had been trained for this moment. He had been warned that the assembly would try to intimidate him, to make him feel insignificant. What they did not understand was that humanity had stopped feeling insignificant the moment they discovered they were not alone. "High Chancellor," David said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. 3 months ago, one of our deep space monitoring stations detected a signal, a distress call encoded in mathematics so ancient that our computers nearly failed to recognize it as intentional communication. He paused, letting the words settle. "We traced the signal to a region of space your own records mark as forbidden. The Vellum Expanse." The reaction was immediate. Thousands of alien voices erupted in sounds that ranged from screams to subsonic rumbles to frequencies that made David's teeth ache. Several delegates began emergency evacuation procedures. Others simply froze, their biological processes overwhelmed by terror. Chancellor Vorith raised a hand, and silence fell like a blade. "You went to the Vellum Expanse?" His voice was barely a whisper now. "You answered a signal from that place?" "We did more than answer it, Chancellor." David reached into his diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small device. "We found who was calling, and we brought them back." The doors at the far end of the chamber opened once more. Through them walked beings that every delegate recognized from their oldest histories, their most forbidden archives, their species' deepest nightmares. 2 figures, tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like starlight on water. Their eyes held depths of color that no human pupil could match. They moved with the quiet dignity of creatures who had watched the galaxy's first stars ignite. Precursors, architects of silence, the civilization that had built the Ulay, foundations upon which every current galactic power unknowingly stood. They were supposed to be extinct. Impossible, breathed Counselor Mechthus of the Machine Collective. The architects were destroyed 12,000 years ago. Every record confirms it. The female architect stepped forward. Her name, she would later explain, translated roughly as dawn breaking over ancient waters. The humans called her Lyra. "We were not destroyed," Lyra said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the chamber itself. "We were hidden, waiting, hoping that when we finally woke, we would find a galaxy that had heeded our warnings. She turned to face the assembly, and her expression shifted to something that looked terribly like grief. You did not heed them, and now the enemy we nearly died to contain is waking up. The hollow are stirring, and they are hungry. The chamber erupted again, but David barely heard it. He was watching Chancellor Vorith, watching the ancient being's mercury form ripple with something he recognized. Fear. Not the fear of a threat that might come someday. The fear of something that was already happening. David Reyes allowed himself a small, grim smile. The assembly thought they had summoned humanity to answer questions. They did not yet understand that humanity had come to deliver a warning and to offer something no one expected, a solution. 3 months earlier, everything had been normal aboard Deep Space Station. Horizon-9. Commander Thomas Bell ran a crew of 53 on what was supposed to be the most boring assignment in the human fleet. Positioned at the edge of explored territory, their job was simple: listen to the void, catalog any unusual signals, and report anything interesting to Fleet Command. In 3 years of operation, they had found nothing interesting. Until the night that changed everything. Communications. Officer Rita Okonkwo was running her standard sweep when the signal appeared. It was faint at first, barely distinguishable from background radiation, but something about it made her pause. Something about the mathematical pattern underlying the noise. She ran it through. Standard analysis. Nothing. She ran it through experimental algorithms designed to detect intentional communication. The system crashed. When it rebooted, a single message appeared on her screen. Origin detected. Distance, 847 light-years. Signal age, 12,000 plus years. Meaning, help. Rita stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she reached for the emergency alert. Commander Bell arrived in the communications center within minutes. He read the analysis 3 times before speaking. "This is from the Vellum Expanse," he said. "The Forbidden Zone. The place every spacefaring civilization warns their ships to avoid." "Yes, sir." "And you're telling me someone has been calling for help from there for 12,000 years? The signal is degrading, sir. In approximately 6 hours, it will fade completely. By the time we report to Fleet Command and wait for orders, it will be gone." Bell understood what she was not saying. They could follow protocol and lose the signal forever, or they could investigate immediately and risk everything. He made his decision in less than 30 seconds. "Prep the scout ship. I'm taking a team in." The journey took 9 days at maximum speed. 9 days of watching the stars change around them. 9 days of studying everything humanity knew about the Vellum Expanse, which was almost nothing. The region was marked as a navigational hazard on every chart. Ships that entered rarely returned. Those that did reported equipment failures, hallucinations, and a sense of wrongness that drove some crews to madness. When the scout ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the expanse, Bell understood why Space itself looked wounded. Vast tears in the fabric of reality leaked radiation in colors that human eyes struggled to process. The stars here were wrong. Too dim, too cold. As if something had been feeding on their light for millennia, and directly ahead, orbiting a dead world circling a dead sun, they found structures that should not exist: stations, defense platforms, shipyards, all dark, all silent, all ancient beyond human comprehension. But on the planet below, a single beacon still flashed its desperate plea. The landing team found the bunker. After 6 hours of searching through ruins that made them feel like insects crawling through the bones of giants. The technology surrounding them was so advanced it barely registered as technology. Walls that shifted at their approach. Doors that opened by reading intentions rather than commands. Systems that had maintained themselves for 12,000 years without any apparent power source. At the bunker's heart, they found the suspension chambers. 17 beings floated in perfect stasis, preserved by processes that human science could not explain. They looked almost human, but taller, more graceful, with an elegance that spoke of millions of years of evolution. Bell made the call. They opened the first chamber. The being inside drew a breath that had been waiting 12,000 years to complete. Her eyes opened, and they contained depths of knowledge that made Belle feel like a child standing before something unimaginably old and wise. "You came," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the universe itself. After all this time, someone finally came. Her name was Lyra, and she had a story to tell. A story about an enemy called the Hollow, about a war that lasted 400 red years, about a desperate final solution that put the enemy to sleep but could not kill them, and about how humanity, through pure accident, had begun to wake them up. "Your communications networks," Lara explained, her voice heavy with exhaustion and grief. "Your faster-than-light traffic. Your expansion into what you call the outer territories. All of it has been degrading the containment field we built to keep the Hollow dormant." She pulled up holographic displays showing the edge of human space, overlaid with patterns of energy that Belle did not recognize. "They are stirring now, moving, reaching out to test the boundaries of their prison. In approximately 6 of your years, they will break free entirely." Belle felt ice forming in his stomach. "And when they break free?" Lyra's ancient eyes met his. "They will consume everything. Your worlds, your people, every civilization in this galaxy. The Hollow do not conquer. They do not negotiate. They feed. And they are very, very hungry." She reached out and touched his hand, her fingers warm despite millennia of frozen sleep. "We built warnings. We left beacons throughout the galaxy telling every civilization to stay away from this place, to never disturb what we had contained. We never found those warnings," Belle said quietly. "No." Lyra's voice broke slightly. "You did not. And now the galaxy must face the consequences." She straightened, gathering herself with visible effort. "But you did something else. Something we never expected. You answered our call. You came when no one else would. And that means there might still be hope." She looked at the other suspension chambers, at her 16 surviving companions. "Wake the others, Commander Bell. We have much to discuss, and very little time to prepare for war." In the darkness of the vellum expanse, something stirred. Something that had been sleeping for 12,000 years felt the first tremors of awakening. And somewhere in the void between stars, humanity was about to discover just how much the galaxy had underestimated them. The war for survival had not yet begun, but it was coming, and humanity would be ready. The scout ship raced back toward human territory at speeds that pushed its engines beyond safe limits. Commander Thomas Bell had transmitted his initial report to Fleet Command, but the response he received was not what he expected. Admiral Helena Cross, commander of Earth's Combined Defense Forces, ordered him to report directly to Geneva. No questions, no explanations, just an immediate summons to the most secure facility on the planet. During the journey, Lyra and the other awakened architects worked to restore their strength. They had been sleeping for 12,000 years, and their bodies needed time to remember how to function. But even in their weakened state, they began sharing information that made Belle's blood run cold. The Hollow were not creatures in any conventional sense. They were something between matter and nightmare, existing partially in dimensions that human physics could not describe. They did not simply kill their victims. They erased them, consumed them so completely that even the memory of their existence faded from the existence. Universe. The architects had fought them for 400 years with weapons that could reshape reality itself. They had lost, not because the Hollow were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they could not be stopped by any means the architects possessed. The best they could manage was a containment field that forced the Hollow into dormancy. A prison of frozen time that would hold as long as nothing. Disturbed it. Humanity had disturbed it. Earth. Geneva. United. Nations Space Command Headquarters. Bell. And his team arrived to find a wall of skepticism waiting for them. Admiral Cross sat at the head of a long table, flanked by Director James Foster of Intelligence, General Maria Santos of Strategic Command, and representatives from every major spacefaring nation on Earth. They listened to Bell's report with expressions ranging from disbelief to open hostility. "You expect us to believe," Director Foster said slowly, "that ancient aliens have been sleeping in your rescue bay for 12,000 years, waiting to warn us about a galaxy-ending threat?" Lyra stepped forward. Despite her exhaustion, she carried herself with dignity that silenced the room. "I do not expect you to believe words," she said. "I expect you to believe evidence." She produced a data crystal that interfaced seamlessly with human technology despite being older than human civilization. The crystal contained sensor recordings from the Vellum expanse, mathematical models of the Hollow's behavior, and projections of their likely expansion once fully awakened. The projections showed the Hollow reaching Earth in approximately 6 years. The room went very quiet. "However," Lyra continued, "the Hollow do not advance in straight lines. They consume in waves, clearing entire sectors before moving to the next. Based on their historical patterns, the first attacks will not target Earth." She adjusted the display, highlighting a region of space that contained dozens of alien civilizations. "They will target the Galactic Assembly's core territories first, the species closest to the containment breach." Admiral Cross leaned forward. "Why should we care about alien civilizations that have never shown us anything but contempt?" Lyra's ancient eyes met hers. "Because if they fall, you will be next. And because I have seen your species, Admiral. I have watched you through monitoring systems that still function after 12,000 years. I know what you have been building in secret." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Your official military number's 800 vessels," Lyra said. "But that is not the truth, is it? You have been preparing for something like this since you first ventured into space." Admiral Cross did not respond. Her silence was answer. Enough. 150 years ago, a human survey team discovered something extraordinary. On a dead moon orbiting a failed star, they found an architect archive. The facility contained technological specifications that made humanity's most advanced systems look like stone tools. Weapons capable of cracking planets, shields that could withstand stellar impacts, propulsion systems that made current faster than light. Drives seemed primitive. The discovery was classified at the highest level. A shadow program was established, funded through channels that did not officially exist, staffed by personnel who had officially died or retired. Over the next century and a half, this program built something the galaxy never suspected. The official human fleet numbered 800 vessels. The shadow fleet numbered 4,000. These ships were larger, faster, and more powerful than anything the Galactic Assembly had ever fielded. They were crewed by personnel who had trained for decades in secret facilities, running simulations against enemies that were always theoretical. Until now, Admiral Cross had commanded the Shadow Fleet for 12 years. She had spent her entire career preparing for a war she hoped would never come. She understood why the war was always inevitable. "You know about the Shadow Fleet?" Cross said finally. "How?" "The architects created the hyperlanes that make faster-than-light travel possible," Lyra replied. "We built detection systems into the fabric of space itself. systems that still function. I know exactly how many ships humanity possesses. I know where they are hidden. I know the specifications of weapons you developed in secret." She paused. "The question is not whether you can help defend this galaxy. The question is whether you will." The debate that followed lasted 72 hours. Politicians argued about exposure. Generals calculated probabilities. Scientists analyzed Lyra's data and reluctantly confirmed that her predictions appeared accurate. The Hollow were real. They were awakening. And they were coming. Finally, the decision fell to the Emergency Security Council. Ambassador David Reyes, Earth's senior diplomat to the Galactic Assembly, presented the options. Option 1. Do nothing. Allow the Hollow to consume the Assembly's territory. Use the time to fortify Earth's defenses and hope humanity could survive alone. Option 2. Warn the Assembly and offer limited assistance. Maintain the secret of humanity's true capabilities while providing enough support to slow the Hollow's advance. Option 3. Full mobilization. Reveal everything. Commit humanity's entire military to a joint defense of the galaxy. The Council debated. Lyra observed without speaking, her ancient eyes watching these young beings struggle with a choice that would determine the fate of trillions. The vote was called. Option 3 passed by a margin of 1 vote. Humanity was going to war. Admiral Cross stood before her. Officers in the command center of the Shadow Fleet's primary base, hidden in the asteroid field of a system that appeared on no official charts. "For 150 years, she said, we have trained for this moment. We have built ships that the galaxy does not know exist. We have developed weapons that would terrify any civilization that saw them. We did this not because we wanted war, but because we understood that someday, somehow, war would find us." She activated a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. That day has arrived. The threat we face is not an alien empire or a rival civilization. It is something far worse. The Hollow care nothing for negotiation or surrender. They will consume everything they touch, and they will not stop until there is nothing left to consume. She zoomed in on the vellum expanse, where darkness was already spreading at the edges of the containment field. Our mission is simple, but not easy. We will defend the galaxy alongside civilizations that have never respected us. We will sacrifice our ships, our people, and our secrets to protect beings who see us as primitives. We will do this because it is right, and because if we do not, everyone dies. She looked at her officers, seeing determination in their eyes. The Shadow Fleet deploys in 72 hours. Every ship, every weapon, everything we have built. The galaxy is about to learn what humanity is capable of. She paused. Make sure they never forget. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic cruiser carrying Ambassador Reyes toward Galactic Assembly headquarters, Lyra shared one final piece of information. "The Hollow are not unstoppable," she said. "We could not defeat them, but we found a way to contain them. The hibernation field that held them for 12,000 years can be restored." Reyes leaned forward. "How?" "We built a facility at the heart of the containment zone. A device capable of generating the field. It still exists. Its power source still functions. What failed were the field emitters themselves, damaged by entropy and by your species' inadvertent interference. So we repair the emitters and turn it back on?" Lyra's expression grew grave. "It is not that simple. The facility is now deep within Hollow-controlled space. Reaching it would require an assault force large, enough to draw the Hollows' attention away from the strike team that would actually install the new emitters." She pulled up tactical projections. "Based on my calculations, such an assault would require the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, and the casualties would be ... significant." "How significant?" 60 to 70% of all participating vessels. The number hung in the air between them. Reyes was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. Then we need to make sure the galaxy is willing to pay that price. We need to show them what humanity is prepared to sacrifice. He looked out the viewport at the stars streaming past. And we need to make them understand that if they do not join us, they will face the hollow alone. The diplomatic cruiser continued toward the assembly headquarters, carrying humanity's warning and humanity's offer. Behind them, in the hidden spaces between stars, the Shadow Fleet began its deployment. And in the darkness of the vellum expanse, the hollow continued to stir. Their prison was cracking. Their hunger was growing. The war for survival was about to begin. And humanity would be at the center of it all. The Grand Assembly Chamber fell into chaos. Ambassador David Reyes stood at the center of the storm, watching 12,000 alien delegates react to Lyra's presence. Some screamed in languages that had no human equivalent. Others prostrated themselves before the living architects, as if witnessing the arrival of gods. Still others demanded immediate evacuation, convinced that the precursors had come to deliver judgment on a galaxy that had failed to heed their ancient warnings. High Chancellor Voreth raised his hands, and silence slowly returned. "You claim the hollow are awakening," he said, his mercury form rippling with barely contained emotion. "You claim our entire civilization faces extinction. And you expect us to simply believe you?" "I expect you to verify," Reyes replied calmly. "Send ships to the vellum expanse. Examine the sensor data we have provided. Consult your own archives about the hollow and the war the architects fought against them. The evidence is there for anyone willing to look." "The vellum expanse is forbidden space," Counselor Macthus interjected. "No ship has successfully explored it in recorded history. Human ships have." Reyes let that statement hang in the air. "We went where you feared to go. We found what you feared to find. And now we are offering to help you survive the consequences." Before anyone could respond, emergency alerts began cascading through the chamber. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing urgent transmissions from the Assembly's early warning network. 3 colony worlds in the outer rim had gone silent. The first images arrived within minutes. Survivors from the affected systems, their ships battered and their minds broken by what they had witnessed. They spoke of darkness that devoured stars, of cities that crumbled to dust in seconds, of screaming that continued long after there were no mouths left to scream. The hollow had begun their advance. Chancellor Voreth stared at the images for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed completely. "What do you propose, Ambassador Reyes?" The negotiations that followed were the most complex in galactic history. 900 civilizations had to agree on a joint military command structure. 17 major faction blocs had to set aside centuries of rivalry and suspicion. Resources had to be allocated, fleets had to be coordinated, and everyone had to accept that their survival depended on cooperation with species they had never trusted. Ambassador Reyes navigated these challenges with patience that surprised even himself. He made alliances where he could, applied pressure where he had to, and reminded everyone constantly that the alternative to cooperation was extinction. But the real turning point came when Admiral Cross arrived. She brought the shadow fleet with her. 4,000 warships emerged from hiding places scattered across the galaxy. Massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Assembly had ever fielded. Carrier groups capable of deploying thousands of smaller craft. Weapons platforms that could punch holes through planetary cores. The Assembly watched in stunned silence as humanity revealed its true power. For 150 years, Cross announced to the assembled delegates, "Humanity has prepared for a threat we knew was coming. We found architect technology and reverse engineered it. We built in secret because we knew the galaxy would not understand. We hid our strength because we knew revealing it would make us targets. She gestured at the fleet displayed behind her. Now the threat has arrived, and we are offering everything we have to defend a galaxy that has never offered us anything in return. Counselor Mechthus was the first to speak. Why? Why would you sacrifice so much for species that treated you as primitives? Cross met his gaze steadily. Because if the Hollow win, there will be no galaxy left to treat anyone as anything. Because survival is more important than pride. And because this is who humanity is, we do not abandon others to darkness, even when they would have abandoned us. The vote was called 2 hours later. The Galactic Defense Coalition was born with near unanimous support. The war began badly. The Hollow advanced in waves, consuming everything they touched. Their attacks bypassed conventional defenses, phasing into existence without warning, materializing inside formations before anyone could react. Assembly ships simply ceased to exist, their crews erased so completely that even sensor records showed nothing but static. Human ships fared better. The architect-derived technology provided some resistance to the Hollow's reality-warping weapons. But resistance was not immunity. In the first week of combat, humanity lost over 200 vessels. Admiral Cross made decisions that would haunt her for the rest of her life. We need to buy time, she said during an emergency briefing. The assembly fleets are taking catastrophic casualties. If we do not protect them, there will be nothing left to protect. She issued orders that placed human ships between the Hollow and their allies. Human crews absorbed attacks meant for assembly vessels. Human ships died so that others might live. It was a calculated sacrifice. Every assembly ship that survived was another ship that could participate in the final assault. Every day the coalition held together was another day for the architects to work on the new field emitters. But the cost was terrible. Commander Thomas Bell, now serving as tactical advisor aboard Admiral Cross's flagship, watched the battle unfold from the command center. He had been present at the beginning of this crisis, and he was determined to see it through to the end. Working with Lyra, he developed predictive algorithms that could anticipate Hollow attacks with increasing accuracy. The information was broadcast to the Coalition fleet in real time, allowing commanders to position their ships where the Hollow would strike next. Slowly, painfully, the tide began to turn. Not victory. Not yet, but survival. The Coalition adapted to the Hollow's tactics. They learned to fight an enemy that should have been unstoppable. They discovered that while the Hollow could not be killed, they could be hurt. They could be slowed. They could be pushed back. At the Battle of Velanthe Prime, the Coalition achieved its first decisive victory. 300 human ships and 800 assembly vessels held the line against a Hollow wave front for 14 hours of continuous combat. Casualties were horrific. Nearly half the defending fleet was destroyed, but 10 billion Velanthe civilians survived. It was enough to prove that the war could be won. Chancellor Vorith visited Admiral Cross after the battle. I have watched many civilizations face extinction, he said. I have seen how they behave when death approaches. The selfishness, the betrayal, the desperate grasping at advantages that will mean nothing if the war is lost. He paused, his mercury form shimmering with colors that suggested deep emotion. Your species is different. You revealed capabilities you could have used to dominate us all. You sacrificed your ships to protect ours. You asked for nothing in return. Cross met his gaze. We asked for everything that matters. Trust, cooperation, a chance to prove that the galaxy can stand, united against darkness. And if we survive, what then? Will humanity demand the power it has earned? Cross was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was tired but certain. Humanity does not want power over others, Chancellor. We want a galaxy where power is shared, where species cooperate instead of compete, where no one has to prepare in secret for a war they hope will never come. She looked out the viewport at the stars. If we survive this, we have a chance to build something better. Not because we forced it on anyone, but because we earned it together. Vorith considered her words for a long moment. You are a remarkable species. Admiral Cross, I did not believe that when your ambassador first walked into my chamber. I believe it now. He extended a tendril of liquid metal. Whatever happens next, humanity has proven something to the galaxy. You have proven that the youngest species can also be the wisest. Cross took his hand, feeling the strange warmth of his alien form. Let us hope wisdom's enough to save us all. In the vellum expanse, the Hollow continued their advance. But for the first time since their awakening, they were meeting resistance they could not easily overcome. And in the hidden workshops of the architect survivors. The new field, emitters were taking shape. The final battle was approaching. The price would be terrible, but humanity was ready to pay it. 6 months into the war, the galaxy learned what desperation truly meant. The Hollow had consumed 47 worlds. 18 billion sentient beings had been erased from existence. Their planets reduced to dead husks floating in space that no longer obeyed the normal laws of physics. The coalition fleet had been reduced to less than half its original strength, and reinforcements were becoming increasingly difficult to find. Admiral Helena Cross stood before the combined leadership of the Galactic Defense Coalition with news that no one wanted to hear. We cannot win this war through attrition, she said, her voice carrying the exhaustion of 6 months of continuous combat. The Hollow consume everything they touch. Every world they take makes them stronger. Every ship we lose weakens our ability to defend the next target. She activated a holographic display showing the war's progression. Red zones marking Hollow territory had spread across nearly a quarter of the galaxy. If we continue our current strategy, we will run out of ships, worlds, and people within the next 18 months. Chancellor Vorth leaned forward. You have a different strategy in mind, Admiral. I do. Cross looked at Lyra, who stood quietly at the edge of the gathering. The architects have completed the new field emitters. If we can deploy them at the original hibernation facility, we can restore the containment field and force the Hollow back into dormancy. The facility is at the heart of Hollow-controlled space, Counselor Mectus pointed out. How do you propose to reach it? Cross pulled up tactical projections. The Hollow respond to threats in proportion to their perceived danger. A small force draws minimal response. A large force draws overwhelming response. I am proposing that we send the largest fleet ever assembled as a diversion, while a small strike team slips through to deploy the emitters. The room went very quiet. How large a fleet? Vorith asked. Everything we have. Every ship in the coalition. 17,000 vessels. And the expected casualties? Cross met his gaze without flinching. 60 to 70%. The silence that followed was absolute. The debate lasted 12 hours. Some argued that the plan was suicide. Others insisted there was no alternative. Faction leaders calculated whether their species would survive the proposed losses. Politicians wondered how they would explain such sacrifices to their populations. Commander Thomas Bell listened to the arguments with growing frustration. He had been there at the beginning, when they found Lyra and the other architects. He had watched the war unfold, seen friends die, witnessed horrors that would haunt him forever. And he knew, with terrible certainty, that Admiral Cross was right. May I speak? He asked finally. Cross nodded. Bell stood and faced the assembly. I am not a general or an admiral. I am a communications officer who happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. But I have learned something during this war that I think you need to understand. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The Hollow are not like any enemy you have faced before. They do not want territory or resources or power. They want to feed, and they will keep feeding until there is nothing left to consume. He gestured at the tactical display. Every day we delay, they grow stronger. Every world they take gives them more energy to take the next. If we wait until we are certain of victory, there will be no one left to achieve it. He looked at each delegate in turn. Admiral Cross is asking you to risk everything on a plan that might fail. I understand how terrifying that is. But the alternative is to watch your civilizations die one by one, knowing you had a chance to stop it and were too afraid to. Try. He sat down. The vote was called 30 minutes later. The plan was approved. The coalition fleet gathered at the edge of the vellum. Expanse. 17,000 vessels from 900 civilizations formed the largest military force in galactic history. Human ships flew alongside assembly craft. Ancient enemies shared formation with species they had never trusted. Every civilization that had something left to offer contributed what they could. Admiral Cross broadcast her final orders from the bridge of her flagship. The Sovereign. What we are about to do will be remembered for as long as this galaxy exists. We are going to fight an enemy that has destroyed civilizations far older and more powerful than ours. Many of us will not survive, but those who fall will fall, knowing that their sacrifice gave everyone else a chance to live. She paused. The strike team is already in position. Our job is to draw the Hollow's attention and hold it for 47 hours. That is how long it will take to install the emitters and activate the field. 47 hours of holding the line against creatures that have been devouring worlds since before most of our species evolved. She looked at the tactical display showing the Hollow's territory. I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. But I have seen what this coalition can do when we fight together. I have seen human ships die to protect assembly vessels. I have seen assembly crews sacrifice themselves to save human colonies. I have seen enemies become allies and strangers become brothers. Her voice hardened. The Hollow think they are facing a collection of frightened species scrambling for survival. They are wrong. They are facing a galaxy united. And today, we are going to show them what that means. She gave the order. The fleet advanced into the darkness. The battle of the vellum expanse was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Hollow responded to the coalition's advance with overwhelming force. They emerged from folded space in waves, their impossible geometries warping reality around them. Ships were torn apart by weapons that should not exist. Crews died screaming as the laws of physics broke down around them, but the coalition did not break. Human ships formed the spearhead of the assault, their architect-derived technology providing the best resistance to Hollow attacks. They pushed forward into the darkness, creating a corridor that assembly vessels could follow. They took casualties that would have destroyed lesser fleets and kept fighting. Admiral Cross commanded from the heart of the chaos. Her flagship was struck repeatedly by Hollow weapons, its shields failing section by section. She refused to retreat. Every minute she held their attention was another minute for the strike team. Hours passed. The casualty count climbed. At 30% losses. Some faction commanders began calling for retreat. Cross ignored them. At 40%. The Hollow concentrated their assault on the human formations, recognizing them as the greatest threat. Human ships died by the hundreds. Cross ordered her remaining vessels to close ranks and hold. At 50%. The strike team reported that they had reached the facility and begun installation. At 60%. The Hollow seemed to sense what was happening. They shifted their assault, trying to break through to the facility. Cross threw everything she had left into stopping them. The Sovereign took a direct hit that killed a quarter of her crew. Cross kept fighting for what remained of her bridge dot, and then, when the casualty count reached 64%, and it seemed the line could not hold another minute, a signal came through from the facility. Installation complete. Field activation in progress. Commander Bell was with the strike team when Lyra entered the activation chamber. The system required a biological interface, an architect consciousness to guide the field's calibration. Someone had to physically connect to the ancient machinery and shape the energy that would span dozens of light-years. Someone had to die. There has to be another way, Bell said. Lyra shook her head. The original facility was designed for beings who no longer exist. I am the only one here with the knowledge and the connection to make this work. We can find another solution. We just need more time. Time is what we do not have. She gestured toward the displays, showing the battle raging outside. Your people are dying out there, Commander. Thousands of them every hour, fighting to give us this chance. I will not waste their sacrifice by hesitating. She touched his face with delicate fingers. You came for us when no one else would. You believed us when no one else did. Your species has given everything to save a galaxy that never offered you anything in return. She stepped toward the interface chamber. This is my gift in return. My final contribution to a war that began before your species existed. She looked back at him one last time. Make sure it was worth it. The chamber sealed behind her, and the field activated dot across the entire vellum expanse. The hollow simply stopped. Their attacks ceased in mid-strike. Their advance halted. Their impossible geometries froze, suspended between one moment and the next. Then they began to fade, not dying, sleeping, folding back into whatever dimension they had occupied during their long hibernation. The darkness retreated, replaced by ordinary space, by normal physics, by stars that shone with stable, healthy light. Admiral Cross watched from the shattered bridge of her flagship as the enemy simply ceased to exist. Then she wept. For the 4,000 ships that would never return home. For the millions of crew members who had given everything. For a victory that cost more than any victory should ever cost. And for a being named Lyra, who had waited 12,000 years for a chance to make her people's sacrifice meaningful. The war was over. The galaxy was saved, but the price would never be forgotten. 1 year after the Battle of the Vellum Expanse, the Grand Assembly Chamber gathered for a session unlike any in its history. The seats were not as full as they had been before the war. Too many civilizations had lost too much. Empty sections marked the places where species had been erased entirely, their worlds consumed before the containment field could be restored. The chamber itself bore scars from emergency repairs made during the darkest days of the conflict, but the beings who remained were different now. Ambassador David Reyes walked the crystalline pathway one final time. He had aged during the war, gray threading through his dark hair, lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights and too many impossible decisions. But he walked with the confidence of someone who had proven everything that needed proving. Chancellor Voraith waited on the central platform. The ancient being's mercury form seemed heavier somehow, weighted by the memory of all that had been lost and all that had been gained. 1 year ago, Voraith began, a young species walked into this chamber and demanded our attention. We looked down on them. We dismissed them as primitives playing at interstellar politics. We believed that nothing they said could possibly matter to civilizations as old and powerful as ours. He paused, letting the silence stretch. We were wrong. The chamber was utterly still. Humanity came to us with a warning we did not want to hear. When we refused to listen, they did not abandon us. When the hollow struck, They revealed capabilities they could have used to dominate us all. Instead, they used those capabilities to protect us. Voriths. Form rippled with colors that suggested deep emotion. They sacrificed 4,000 ships and 2 million lives to hold the line while the containment field was restored. They placed themselves between our worlds and extinction. They asked for nothing in return except our trust. He turned to face the human delegation. Today, this assembly takes its first step toward repaying that debt. Not because we are obligated, not because we fear what humanity might do if we refuse, but because we have learned something that should have been obvious from the beginning. He spread his arms, encompassing the entire chamber. The measure of a civilization is not its age or its technology or its power. It is how that civilization treats others when it has no obligation to treat them well. By that measure, humanity has proven itself the greatest civilization this galaxy has ever produced. The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from species that had once regarded humanity with contempt. The ceremony that followed formalized what everyone already knew. Humanity was granted full partnership in the Galactic Assembly. Not junior membership, not associate status. Full partnership with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. Human representatives would sit on the highest councils. Human fleets would patrol the most sensitive borders. Human voices would be heard in every major decision. But the formal recognition was almost anticlimactic compared to what came after. One by one, delegates from civilizations that had fought alongside humanity during the war approached the human delegation. They offered alliances. They proposed joint research programs. They invited human diplomats to their homeworlds and human scientists to their academies. Species that had been rivals for millennia found common ground in their shared respect for what humanity had done. Old grudges faded in the light of new understanding. The galaxy was changing, and everyone knew it. Admiral Helena Cross attended the ceremony via holographic link from her hospital bed. She was still recovering from injuries sustained during the final battle, but she refused to miss this moment. "You should be here in person," Reyes told her during a brief private communication. "I am here in person," Cross replied. "Every officer who died under my command is here. Every ship that held the line is here. Every sacrifice that made this moment possible is here." She looked at the assembly through the holographic display. "This is not my victory, David. It belongs to everyone who fought. I just happened to survive long enough to see it." Commander Thomas Bell did not attend the ceremony. He stood instead at the memorial built on the planet where Lyra had sacrificed herself, a structure of crystal and light that rose above the ancient architect facility. 17 surviving architects maintained it now, tending to a monument that honored their fallen leader and all who had died to restore the containment field. The memorial contained the names of everyone who had fallen in the final battle. 4,000 ships, 2 million crew members, species from across the galaxy, united in death as they had been united in life. Lyra's name was inscribed at the very top, in script that the architects had used 2 million years ago. Bell traced the letters with his fingers. "I keep thinking about what you said," he murmured. "About why you seeded the galaxy with life. About what you hoped would grow from your legacy." He looked out at the stars visible through the memorial's transparent walls. "You hoped for compassion, courage, willingness to sacrifice everything for others. And I think maybe you got what you hoped for. I think maybe that is exactly what grew." He was silent for a long moment. "I hope you can see what is happening out there. The galaxy is coming together in ways it never did before. Species that hated each other are cooperating. Civilizations that competed for everything are sharing knowledge. The walls between us are coming down." He touched the inscription one more time. That is your legacy, Lyra. Not the technology. Not the containment field. This, a galaxy that learned, finally, how to stand together. 5 years later, Ambassador Reyes retired from diplomatic service. He had spent those years building the framework for a new galactic civilization, one based on partnership rather than competition, on cooperation rather than conflict. His final act was to dedicate a monument on Earth in Geneva. At the site where humanity had made its decision to fight, the monument was simple: a single spire of white stone, inscribed with the names of every human who had died in the war. At its base, words in every human language and every galactic script repeated the same message. They gave everything so that others might live dot, standing before the monument. Reyes addressed a crowd that included humans and aliens, veterans and civilians, beings from worlds that had once seemed impossibly distant. When we first discovered that we were not alone in the universe, he said, we were afraid. Afraid of what was out there. Afraid of what might threaten us. Afraid of our own insignificance in a cosmos so vast and ancient. He gestured at the alien delegates in the crowd. Now we know something different. We know that the universe is full of beings who struggle with the same fears, the same hopes, the same questions we do. We know that whatever divides us is less important than what unites us. We know that together, we can face anything. He looked up at the monument. The people whose names are written here understood that truth. They died defending it. And because of them, we have a chance to build something better than anything that came before. He fell silent for a moment. I do not know what the future holds. There will be other threats, other challenges, other moments when everything seems lost. But I know this. When those moments come, we will face them together. Not as humans or aliens or any single species. As a galaxy. As a family. He stepped back from the podium. That is the promise we make today. That is the legacy we carry forward. And that is why their sacrifice was worth it. In the rebuilt Grand Assembly Chamber, Chancellor Vorith watched the ceremony via holographic link. The ancient being had served longer than any chancellor in history, but he had finally decided to step down. His successor would be chosen from a new generation of leaders, beings who had grown up in a galaxy transformed by war and united by sacrifice. You changed everything, he murmured to no one in particular. A species that existed for barely an eye blink of cosmic time. And you changed everything. He thought about all the civilizations he had watched rise and fall during his long life. The empires that conquered and crumbled. The powers that burned bright and faded to nothing. The endless cycles of competition and conflict that he had assumed were simply the nature of intelligent life. Humanity had proven him wrong, not through strength, though they had strength. Not through technology, though they had technology. Through something far simpler and far more powerful, through the simple willingness to help others. Even when it cost them everything. The measure of a civilization, he said softly, repeating the words he had spoken at the recognition ceremony. By that measure, humanity has proven itself the greatest civilization this galaxy has ever produced. He watched the crowd on Earth begin to disperse. Humans and aliens walking together through the streets of Geneva. Perhaps, he added, they will teach the rest of us to be worthy of them. And far away, in the silent heart of the vellum expanse, the containment field hummed with stable energy. The hollow slept their dreamless sleep, contained by technology, 2 million years old, and sacrifice. Barely 5 years passed. The monitoring stations that ringed the Forbidden Zone kept their endless watch. Human crews and assembly personnel worked side by side, maintaining the vigil that would continue for as long as civilization endured. In the memorial, at the center of the facility, 17 architects tended the crystal monument they had built for Lyra. Visitors came from across the galaxy now. Beings who wanted to see the place where the war had ended and a new age had begun. Above the entrance, words in the ancient architect script welcomed them. Here lies the hope of 2 million years. Here began the future of all who follow. And beneath those words, in script that every species could read, we remember, we honor, we continue. The galaxy had survived, the galaxy had changed, and humanity had shown them all what it truly meant to be great.